Well, why is it flipping? Hello there. So for some reason the camera has mirrored it. So I don't know if you're seeing it right or if I'm just seeing it wrong, but we're going to wait for a couple minutes for people to connect, and then we'll get started meeting some of our little animal friends here. Show me your face. There you go. All right. All right, so for those already connected, welcome. I'm going to be wearing sunglasses because I set up a bunch of lights so that I'm not completely in the dark. I want to welcome everyone here. Please chat, ask any questions while we're doing this. I'm going to look at my phone once in a while just to see what the chats are because I can't read my computer from over here. And in a few moments, we'll get started. I'll introduce you to some of the different animals I got here. Some are pretty eager. One has already escaped and was running around my room. The other ones are pawing at the cages to try and get out. So let's see what's happening here. I think I shared it to my page. So for those that are connected currently, how's the sound sounding? How's the light looking? Is everything looking smooth and clear? Hopefully not pixelated. 1 second, I'm going to run over to the desktop and quickly read all those comments. 1 second. All right. I don't think there's any way I'm going to be able to keep up with all the conversations. So you guys can talk amongst yourself. I'll try to keep an eye on it here to see what I can do. I think I can do it from my phone. My phone. Whoop, turn off the audio. All right, there we go. Glad to hear the lights are looking good and the sound is okay. All right, we're gonna wait just a couple more minutes here, see if anyone else wants to join us, and then I'll get started. Like I said, introducing you to some of these critters. Got a couple neat ones to show you while we're here. This is Chloe. Chloe, don't come say, "Oh, are you mad about my hat? You wanted kisses earlier. Should I take it off? Is that better? I don't like the sunglasses either. Don't come step up. No. Sunglasses off. Is that better now? You can't know that I'm recording. Because before we started, you would not stop talking. Asking for kisses and cuddles. Kiss. Can kiss? No. Being a chicken bum? You were all cuddly before. Did you poop on my floor? Awesome. Thank you. So we're going to talk a bit about how much I don't like turtles and tortoises probably in a bit. But in maybe half an hour or so that I have one of the tortoises here in a box, it already managed to poo all over and pee on itself. So it had to go for a bath and it smells disgusting in here. And that was just in a short little while. Oh, and at the same point, in the moment of taking Chloe out of her travel box to put up there, she pooped on my chair and my elbow, which got into my shirt. So, hey, do you want to come up now? Okay. We lost Chloe. 1 second. Be right back. Come here. Step up. Oh, don't be like that. Oh, you probably don't like the big scary lizard. Come kiss now. We're going to rub. Oh, rub into this. What about this side? Or come kiss. You want to kiss? Are you not a fan of the lizard? Or the gator? Hey? Why don't you want to talk now? You were a chatterbox earlier. Don't poop on me. Don't you do it. Nope. Back up there. You already got me once. I've got like 5 lights pointed directly at my face. So again, I'm gonna put this back on. This little buddy here sitting on the gator, wanting to go for a run. Do you guys know what this one is? Let's see, who wants to guess? Guess what this is. Let's see. Well, you guys are pretty active talking. It's going to be like a real birthday party. You're just going to talk to each other and not pay attention to the presentation. At least it's authentic. So yeah, the reason that we're doing this little presentation is because we're all stuck at home during this lovely pandemic that we're all having to figure out how to deal with as our current normal. There are no birthday parties. There's no social gatherings. We're not supposed to have play dates. We're not supposed to do much of anything other than stay home, which you should be doing. Wash your hands, stay home, only go out for the bare necessities and physically distance yourself. I had to go get some groceries after my 14-day quarantine. And it was an interesting experience. Luckily, I'm in a small town where it's just the one gas store, convenience store that sells everything but ammunition pretty much. So that's convenient. But since my buddy Brennon's birthday party was canceled, I felt bad. And I know there's a lot of other kids too who've had their birthdays canceled. So I thought, hey, I'm sitting here I've got all this time on my hands because I don't think I'll be, if I get a booking by June, July, that'll be really nice. But otherwise, no income, nothing to do. I think once the farmers start going, I'll see if I can jump on a tractor, help out one of the locals. But otherwise, making the most of it, play with the animals, socializing, feeding, make video from the Narcissus snake dens, the largest gathering of snakes pretty much anywhere in the world is here in Manitoba, just outside Winnipeg, in Narcissus, just past Inwood, which is past Toulon. And they all come out of their brumation, their hibernation for the winter of sleeping under the limestone where it doesn't freeze quite so badly. And then they go try and get frisky for as much as they can and find food in the summer and then back to their little holes. So I put that one out, did a little adventure at Reptilia after the CRB in September. That was a fun video to do with Dave Kaufman, Brian Cusco, and Gavin from Balls to You out of the UK. That was cool. And Kevin was along as well. What else have I put out? Oh, all the adventures from Mexico. Pushed those out right away. We did Escaray, which is an eco park. We also did Tulacan, which is reserve, sanctuary, and education center. They essentially do what we do, but in a cooler place than Manitoba. They get to do it outside Puerto Morales, Mexico, which is between Playa del Carmen and Cancun. So that Yucatan Peninsula where there's all sorts of awesome. And then at the same time, we also saw Crococan Zoo, which is a great facility taking in a lot of crocodiles from the farming trade where they use them for meat and leather, and then just people's pets that they shouldn't obviously have. But all right, I think that's enough chit-chatting. It is 12 minutes. So let's get started. So for those that have never had the pleasure of meeting me or seeing one of our shows, my name is Steve, and I'm from Prairie Exotics. I've been for the last 10 years educating the public through presentations such as we're going to do right now at typically daycare, schools, birthdays, public gatherings, the mall, festivals, fairs, you name it, we do it. But given our situation, we're stuck in my bedroom. So I convert stuck at home. Many are missing birthdays or birthdays with friends, and figured, you know what's better than playing with some animals, learn a little bit about them, and just have some fun. So the first one up we got here is my little friend George. George is one of 3 bearded dragons that we had come in from Brandon. Most, if not all, of the animals that we currently care for are surrender pets that people don't want to take care of for whatever reason. Life changes, things happen, and whatnot. But my little friend George here is a bearded dragon, called so because obviously he's got the cute little beard under here. Now, having a beard is not so great for the lady dragons, unfortunately, but the boys, they actually use that to show off. Kind of like when us guys are flexing our muscles, showing off how big and strong and cool we are. The boys will puff out their chin like a big balloon, puff it all the way out, and it'll actually turn black. Now, bearded dragons these days come in all sorts of colors and patterns. They call them morphs. They even have some crazy ones called silkies and leatherbacks that have no scales or spikes. I'm personally not a huge fan of those because they need the scales to protect themselves from the sun. You essentially have to put like suntan lotion on a silky, which seems kind of silly for a dragon from the desert. But anyway, they got the big beard and they puff that out. Girls will start to wave their little hands in the air, wave them like they don't care. George does. He doesn't want to wave. But they also do a little dance back and forth. But if the girls don't like those boys showing off being silly, this tail actually becomes a weapon. They'll use it as a whip and try and hit them with it. Smack it back and forth. Or they'll even body check them, like in hockey, with the little spikes on the side, eh? And these spikes here, they are prickly. They move back and forth. And note again on the silkies, they don't have these side spikes, so their defense is taken away. Another not smart thing to do to animals. But anyway, they got those spikes. They'll actually try and body check each other to make them go away. And you can push them back and forth, but what they're doing is if they're getting picked up like this, not a big fan of it, or let's say there's a predator wants to eat them, they're actually going to take a big breath of air and puff themselves up like a big balloon or like a puffer fish. And that really works out to help make sure they're not going to get eaten by a predator. So it's a pretty good defense for these guys. These are actually one of my favorite pets. I won't say they're always the best for a beginner. I'd say maybe more intermediate, just because they do need more space and they do a little bit more cost to set up and then care as well. Their enclosure needs to be a minimum, at least the size of my table here, like 2.5 feet by 4 feet, give or take. Height isn't so important as long as they can climb a few branches and get closer to the basking light if they need. They do need a lot of UV, being from a warm area of Australia there. They want to have, I think it's like 14%, at least 12 to 14%. I find for my guys, the best way to do it, set up a light bar right across the whole top. Arcadia typically seems to be the best, while a little bit more expensive per bulb. They last a year at least, which most other bulbs on the market are 6 months. So having one that gives you double the life is kind of nice. Then you can just use a ceramic heat emitter, which is going to last like 7 to 8 years. Is a bit cheaper to actually adjust the hotspot. And nice thing, since there's no light coming out of that heat emitter, you can just use a simple dimmer switch to up and down the heat as you need to adjust it to get that basking spot proper. I think these guys, their basking spots can be around 120-ish, give or take. But then you want to have a warm side of 80 and then the cooler side around probably 70, but they can cool down to 65 over the evenings because it does drop down in Australia quite a bit. Their diet's going to be an omnivore. They like their salad in the morning. They get some veggies, greens, lettuce, all that healthy stuff we should eat lots of. Lunch and supper, though, they're typically going to eat their bugs, crickets, cockroaches, worms, odd little mouse once in a while, but not too many mice because you don't want to get that fat all in there. It's not so good for them. Now, obviously, with our lovely weather we have today, I don't know, for those that are here in Manitoba, it is snowing. We were rid of most of all of our snow, but now it is back. But given our temperatures, it will probably not be here past the weekend, so not a big deal. But I'm not taking George here out for a walk anytime soon. Sometimes in July, August, once we do get our warmer temperatures for the month or two, I got a little leash, a holler like a collar like a puppy. I try to take him for walks, but honestly, he usually just sits there and people laugh and point at Steve because he's got a lazy lizard on a leash, not really doing much of anything. So what I'll often do instead is pick him up and just throw him on my shoulder like a pirate's got their parrot. Got my bearded dragon, but often with the bearded dragon I like to do is, especially wearing a hat like this, is climb right up and sit on Steve's head. So yeah, that'll happen. I gotta hope it doesn't poop and make a mess up there. So with proper care, these guys can live 12 to 15 years. So they are a little bit of a commitment. Again, the space, the time, the money to set them up. There's a couple other geckos that we'll talk about maybe later or in another show where it's a little bit cheaper. Maybe not quite a shorter lifespan. They're still usually 15 to 20 years, but you won't have to deal with bugs, heat, lights, all that kind of stuff. But let me put George back in. Oh, one thing. I don't know if you noticed. George is missing something. Now, I don't know George's specific story of why he doesn't have his left hand there anymore, but I know often for babies, when people are breeding them, if they don't separate them into large enough enclosures, provide enough food, often siblings will start to nip and eat at tails, toes, and whole feet in some cases. So you definitely need to be careful of that. Hopefully that's not what happened to my little buddy here, but he is an amputee, right? All right, 1 second. I'm going to grab something in a pillowcase here, and maybe I'm going to move my gator. 1 second. Nah, we'll leave the gator there. I should maybe turn around so my butt's not on the screen. I wonder what might be in here. Let's see. What does it feel like? It feels long and round and smooth. It feels like an elephant's trunk. Do you guys think it's a baby elephant? Let's see. Oh, I got it by the trunk. I'm going to pull it out. Nope. It's not. It's my friend Kahlua. So let me just double check and see if anyone's asking any questions I'm missing. Holy cow, I don't think I'm going to be able to keep up with this, guys. You are chatterboxes. Okay, so what I think I'll do, because honestly, this is my first time live streaming. I mean, okay, I've done Facebook streams at events where I walked around and talked with people as I've seen their comments come up. Completely sidetracked. So at the end, if there are questions, try to remember them, write them down, and we'll talk about questions after. All right, so anyway, Kalua is a ball python. She comes from Central West Africa. And she's full size. She won't get any bigger. Now, for a python, she is not very big, right? Everyone thinks python, they think reticulated as a Burmese and African rocks. And those guys are big. They can get over 20 feet, 200 plus pounds. But this one here, she is over 26 years old, I believe. She's been this big since she's 3 or 4. Won't get any bigger, but if all goes well, she could live 40 to 50 years potentially. So they're called a ball python because where some snakes might be a little more aggressive / defensive, these guys, when they're scared of something coming towards them, their defense is to literally roll up into a ball and protect their head in the center. And they say, if I can't see you, you're not there, I'm nice and safe. But as we can see, Kalua here is not very scared. She's done enough presentations. She's socialized, likes people, and I can have her out like this. Now, they're also called a royal python because in Africa, where they're found royalty, like kings and queens would wear them as a nice necklace for a night out on the town. Or even as a bracelet, but there's no way I could wear this snake as a bracelet. So for bracelets, they use little babies. And this one, like I said, is not a baby. She's full size. And she's got something going on here. She's got some shed skin. So for those not aware, which I'm sure most of you kids are, snakes shed their skin every their first shed is 10 to 11 days after they're born, whether that's their live birth or their hatch out of an egg. I'll clean that up later. And then it's every couple weeks to every couple months to every couple years once they're a full-size snake. Like a 20-plus-year-old snake's going to shed once every year or so, but they're always growing. Always shedding their skin. And when they shed their skin, they have the eye caps, right? The skin right over their eyes, and they can't really see. So they don't often like to eat during that time and can be a little more finicky to deal with. Now, one of the other cool things with pythons, let me see if I can bring it close enough to the camera. Oh, you don't want to show them. Show them your pets. Okay, she doesn't want to show. So they've got little heat pits, little holes all on the top of her mouth. And we know snakes smell with their tongue. Can talk about that again in a little bit, but they can not only smell this reptile, or not the reptiles, but the rodents that they're looking to find, the mice, the rats, the small bunnies, the squirrels, with that tongue by flicking it out. But they can also sense the heat because it's a reptile. It is cold-blooded or ectothermic, so it doesn't have a heat signature. To warm up, they go into the sun. To cool down, they go into the shade. Whereas a rat, being a mammal like us, it has an internal body temperature that when we get too warm, we start to sweat. And when we get too cold, we start to shiver to try and warm up. So we control our temperature inside our body. They control it using the outside. And since that's different, they can actually sense with those pits the warmth from the rats. They can smell them and they can sense the warmth. So they got a double way of finding their food. It's pretty sweet. Now, a lady this big and this old doesn't need to eat very often. A little baby snake, that's a ball python, is going to eat every week or so, every 7 to 10 days, roughly. As they get bigger and you move up their food to a larger rat, they're typically going to eat every 10 to 14 days, so every 2 weeks or so. But once they get over 20 years old like this, they're not growing. They're just maintaining, and they don't have to go hunting for food. They're living in a nice cushy enclosure where Steve gets to take care of them. So I feed her every 2 months. She eats a big jumbo rat about the size of both of my fists. We take a frozen rat from the freezer. We thaw it so it's nice and warm. She uses her tongue to smell it, her heat pits to feel it, gives a big kiss, a hug, squeezes it. And once she realizes that it's not moving, it's not breathing, then she starts to give it a bigger kiss and a hug and starts to eat the whole thing. And you'll notice a big lump in her belly. And a lot of people think that a snake might just be a big tail with a face, but they actually have body parts. After the beautiful face on the head, they've got a long neck. On Kalua here, her neck goes to about here. Once it gets thicker, that's the body. That's where the organs are, like the heart, the lungs, the kidney, the stomach. And lastly, her tail is only just this little bit. You can tell because it gets really narrow here, and that's a snake's butt that Steve's touching. Whoop, come back here. Now, I don't have to be worried because she only eats every 2 months. She only poops about a week after she's digested it. So giving her a bath every week or so, she's actually fairly clean. So I don't need to worry about it too much, unlike that tortoise, which is definitely not clean. Now, if there's any adults or hobby people watching, they might be like, oh no, you're pulling the snake skin off the snake. You got to be careful. You shouldn't do that. Well, yes, but I've been doing this for a long time and I know my snakes, and it's just very loose, a little bit of stuff. It's not stuck. If it was on the eye cap, there's things you have to be a little more careful for because you don't want to scratch their eye as you're pulling that skin off. But there are some different things which we can maybe talk about a little bit later. Now, she is not going to sit still to do any tricks, so I'm going to put her away. I'm going to bring out something that's wet and likes to hop. What do you guys think that might be? I'll give you a hint, though. It's not a wet kangaroo, although that would be cool. I did have a kangaroo once. His name was Austin. He came from the Little Rays Reptile Zoo as they were traveling across the prairies. I got to watch him since he wasn't allowed to be in Winnipeg. So I had given them some of my animals, and they gave me some of theirs. I was watching Austin, the kangaroo. There's Prince, the dingo. There's Peanut, the Cuvier's caiman. There was, Fiona, the American alligator. A retic, some carpets, some other fun stuff. I've had the pleasure of getting to work with a lot of neat animals through various friends and organizations and zoos. So that's pretty awesome. Now I'm going to bring out my friend Jabba the Hutt. And I am going to take my gator off the table. Oh, so yeah, by the way, it's not real. It's just the model. It came from a friend that makes them down in the States, Aaron Borrow. He makes replicas. There's zoo quality, museum quality replicas out of foam and rubber and paint. And the nice thing is I can take them into Winnipeg where the real species would be illegal. Can't have them. So I can take my fake one in, and it's a lot cheaper to take care of. I shove it in a closet and I don't have to feed. Oh, and you're extra gross right now. Here, let me make you pretty. So, what I'm pulling off here on my friend little Jabba the Hutt is not just dirt. It's actually his skin covered in dirt. So, because he's got a protective layer. He's an Argentine horned toad. They also call him a Pac-Man frog because he's round and his mouth goes from one armpit to the other. He's pretty much half a mouth. And he goes around nom, 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 trying to eat everything. But sometimes first off, 1 second. Being an amphibian, he doesn't breathe through just his nose and mouth like we do, right? So he actually breathes through and whatnot. Can get sucked in there and make him a little sick. So we don't want to do that to him. But in Argentina, if there is a drought where there's no rain and he can't stay wet, this little smarty pants actually digs a big hole into the dirt as deep as he can. And his skin hardens into a shell, like a cocoon that keeps him safe with no food and no water for weeks, up to like a month, I think it is, till it finally rains. The rain soaks down through the dirt. He's like, oh yeah, party time. Cracks out of his little shell, digs up through the dirt, and then goes hopping through the puddles with his friends and finds some bugs to eat. Now, as far as a pet, they're pretty easy to take care of. You can now this is not his own home. This is just his travel case, but essentially something very similar to this, maybe about twice as big as this. Put in cocoa fiber dirt, water, and sit there. Now, you got to be careful. If you buy these guys, especially as a little baby, these guys, if we look, let me show you. They got really tiny little front arms. And if you give them a big water bowl and they fall into the water bowl, they sometimes fall upside down. And with their silly little arms and legs, they can't flip themselves over, and they will legitimately drown upside down in their water bowl. I've seen it happen. Sad. Don't want that. So with these guys, if you do give them a water bowl, put like moss in there so they can't drown in it, and or just keep the whole enclosure moist enough on at least one side of it, if not the whole thing, because they often just dig down, because what they'll do is they sit in the dirt, they cover themselves up. The only thing sticking out those two little eyes like little horns. That's why they call them a horned frog. And they're an ambush predator, so they don't waste their time hopping around too much for food. They sit and wait for food to come by for them, like us with skip the dishes right now, right? So they sit there, wait for food to come by, and as it comes by, they jump out of the dirt, hit them with that big sticky tongue in there, and in. This guy can eat almost a full-size mouse in pretty much one chomp. Well, no, probably 2 chomps for the most and sucks up the tail like spaghetti. It can be pretty impressive. But again, to take care of. And these guys will live 15 to 20 years. He's not even full size. I've seen them get like quite a bit bigger, almost fist size. But how about this? Do you guys like geckos? Do you want to see a gecko? I think I got a gecko, but first I need to wipe my hands off with sanitizer before I touch my face and do stuff. Un momento, por favor. Okay. Let's see. Gecko time. Gecko time. Oh. So, he's been doing a lot better, but I used to joke this is one of my meanest animals I have. Now, typically, leopard geckos are one of the more popular, docile, awesome beginner pets. But I don't know what this guy's early story was with his life. I got him surrendered. And yeah. He'll be really calm for the first little while. And he does that licking. And all of a sudden he just turns. And he kind of looks like he's going to yawn, but he bites. And he doesn't just bite and let go easily. He does what gators do, where he bites and does a barrel roll. And well, he doesn't really have sharp teeth per se. He's got this jawbone that's like serrated. And so when he crunches and chews and spins, he pulls chunks out. So while not often, he's not reliable, and it hurts a lot when he bites. Now, for a gecko, careful. For a gecko, I typically recommend the gargoyle or crested gecko, which I don't have right now. It's at my friend's. We'll talk about them later. They're convenient because they need no heat, no lights, and no bugs. You can get away with feeding them just a fruit smoothie. But this one, being a terrestrial gecko, it lives on the ground. You need a tank, I'd say roughly the size of this mat. You will find people that put them in a 10, 15, even 20-gallon tank, and that might work, but I prefer to give them more space, especially floor space, though they do like to climb, and if you give them some ledges and tree branches, rock ledges, they will use those. Being nocturnal, they don't really need light, but almost all animals will benefit from some UV. They do need heat, and while you can use a light bulb, it's often a little harder to get the right temperature in the right location that you want, so using a heat pad with a controller is often a little bit easier. And like I said, they do need bugs every 2 to 3 days, give or take. But one of the nice things about leopard geckos and their cousins, actually the fat-tailed geckos, is that they will typically go to the bathroom and poop in the same spot. While that's not always convenient if they choose to poop on their house or in their water dish or food dish, if you can get them to poop on like a piece of paper towel, you can actually move the paper towel to a location where you want them. They'll typically kind of follow it like a cat. You can almost litter train them like a cat in that way, and then get them pooping in an easy location to clean and not on their house or in their dishes. They don't have the sticky toes because they're not arboreal. They're living on the ground. And like I said, with the crested geckos, or sorry, not crested geckos, the bearded dragons, they can often lose their tails and toes from siblings. With these guys, they often lose their tails and toes from shedding issues. I showed you with the ball python how the skin was shedding off, and they shed it usually one big piece. And these guys, what they do, they actually eat it. So because they typically sleep and stay in the same spot often, they don't want to shed their skin where they are living, have a predator find out where they've been staying, and it apparently is good protein. So they often use it to pull the skin right off all their toes so it doesn't get stuck either in their tails, because if that skin doesn't get all the way off, like a rubber band, they start to build up and it'll cut off the circulation and they'll start to lose tips of tails and toes. Now, this guy was next to a female and managed to get his fingers under the divider, and she took 2 or 3 of his fingers, so he kind of hangs loose right now. Now, one thing to mention, too, is with the arboreal geckos, those guys, they live up in the trees. So they typically have a long monkey tail so they can hang. It's like an extra arm almost. This one being a terrestrial on the ground gecko, it has a fat tail. And the reason the tail is so fat is kind of like a camel stores water in their hump. These guys actually store extra food and water nutrients in their tails, like a fat reserve. So if they can't find any food or water for a while, they've got a backup right back here. It's like an extra life. Kind of handy. And another way it's an extra life is if they're having a nice day like this, let's say, and all of a sudden a predator wants to come by and eat my friend here. Predators are smart, but they're not very nice. They're going to bite my little friend Larry here on the head, shake him up, boop, 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 and break his neck and kill him and eat him. That's no good if you're a gecko. So what he does is he takes his tail, it's kind of fat, and it's more brightly colored. It almost kind of looks like his head. And he shakes it back and forth. He says, Mr. Predator, you should eat that. And when the predator goes to bite that tail thinking it's his head, he doesn't even give him a chance. He has a muscle in here. He shoots it off. Ejecto tailo. And that tail goes flying off, and it can wiggle off his body for 3 to 5 minutes. So the predator's like, oh, look, a piece of candy. You can eat that up. And then he's like, I got to run away and grow a new tail. I won't be back. And that's the thing. He can actually grow that gecko tail back, like an extra life. Some geckos can't, like the crested gecko, but most and many of them can. All right, let's put this little guy back in his box. And I'm going to bring out one of the worst pets ever. 1 second. 1 second. It's my friend Francine the machine. And you're going to love her because she's cute, but she's a horrible, horrible creature pet. So, do we think my friend Francine the machine here would be a good swimming turtle? No, not so much. So here in Manitoba, where we live, we've got 2 types of turtles. We got our painted turtles, and we've got our snapping turtles, common snapping turtles. And those dudes, they've got a light, thin shell and float through the water, and they've got webbed feet. If we look at my friend Francine the machine here, we'll notice she has a high dome, heavy shell. And she's got big stumpy legs with some sharp claws for climbing and digging. So she is actually a tortoise. She's a Hermann's tortoise from Europe. But for a tortoise, she's not very big. I don't know if you guys have ever heard or seen of a Galapagos or Aldabra tortoise. Those dudes get huge. You could almost put a saddle on it and ride them. And they can live over 200 years. So that's a lot of space, a lot of food, a lot of poop, a lot of time. But lucky for Steve, Francine will not get that big. She's pretty much full size already at about 7 years old. She won't get much bigger at all, but she could live potentially 80 to 100 years if we take good care of her here. Now, when she gets scared or goes to sleep, she goes into her shell, puts a little face in there, and she'll close her face and it'll cover it up with the little feet. And she stays nice and protected in her shell. And when she wakes up in the morning, she says, good morning, everybody. Scary people don't know them. Back of the shell. And then she closes the door. But she's so friendly, she just wants to come out. She's got a little tail tucked up under here. Now, being a lady, she's got a short little tail, whereas the boy's got a big, longer tail with a bulb on the end. And then little back feet's going too. Now, she cannot leave her shell. It's attached to her body. Franklin's sitting there outside his shell watching TV or reading a book. He was lying to you. He cannot leave his shell either. Actually, when she hatched out her eggs, she was about the size of a toonie. And as she grows up, each of her 13 scoots that every turtle and tortoise has starts to grow apart. And her shell is actually made of the same stuff as our fingernails. And great pets is because they do need a lot of space. You see how active she needs to be. She wants at least a 4 by 8 foot of space, if not more. And come summer, if she can be outside, a horse, essentially. And then think of it, though, for 75 to 100 years of a little eating, pooping monster. If you have it with you. Okay, so wait, before I get to that. As I said earlier, if not all, most of the animals that I have are other people's pets that they want to take care of for whatever reason. They gave them to me. And the reason we got Francine here, I think her name was Tank Girl before, is the same reason we get a lot of the different animals. There is a boy. He was having his 14th birthday. He had proven the whole year before that he was ready to get his first pet. He picked a tortoise. He did a research. He did a presentation. He proved to mom and dad he was ready to go. And for his 14th birthday, he got Francine. But then fast forward just 4 years. He's now 18. He graduated from high school. He's got a job to pay for his new car. He's hanging out with his girlfriend and his other friends. And he's not at home taking care of or playing with Francine. And even worse was come fall, he had to go travel. I think it was to BC to go to school, and he couldn't take his little tortoise along with him. So mom was stuck at home with a tortoise, which they only had for 4 years, that she didn't really want to take care of. She's got other stuff to deal with, right? And that's just 4 years out of Francine's potentially 100-year life. So that's why when we're picking these little pets, we have to realize that these, in some cases, are a lifelong term. Or even if they're 20 years, it's still a long time to have a pet. In the tortoise case, if you get one when you're 14, you're going to have it through, if you keep it the whole time, through school and college, getting married, having kids, being a grandma or a grandpa, sitting in an old folks' home, just petting your little tortoise there you've had for your whole life. Now, for fun, though, sometimes I race the turtles and tortoises. I'll put them all on one side of their enclosure, put all their salad over here, and I'm like, race for breakfast. And it takes to lunch to get there. Sometimes brunch if they're very motivated, but it's one of the slowest little races ever. Oh, yeah, and like I said earlier, she was in her box for not even 20 minutes. I pulled her out of her enclosure, which was cleaned yesterday. She had food and water, and she peed out and pooped all over her box. I had to give her a bath. So that's the other thing. It's disgusting. It's annoying, but it's kind of smart on their behalf. I explain it to the little kids. Imagine you're not potty trained. You go to bed, you wake up in the morning, and you've had an accident, and you wet the bed. You go to school, and you come home. You don't want to crawl into a bed that's still messy, that wasn't cleaned up. You hope mom cleaned it up. And tortoises are actually kind of the same way. They don't want to poop in their house, in their home where they live, in their enclosure. So as soon as I take them out, like I said, in 15, 20 minutes this time of being in her box, bam, she is gone to the bathroom. If I don't take her out for a couple days, she's smart enough. She'll actually crawl into her water dish. She poops in her water dish, making what I call turtle poop soup, and then carries on because she knows that Steve needs to come and clean that because she can't have dirty water. So while disgusting and annoying, it is pretty smart on her behalf, but cleaning up turtle poop soup for 100 years is really not on the top of my list of things to be doing with my life right now. So yay, turtles. Okay, how about this? Let's do let's do something fuzzy. Now, I wonder what I might have that's fuzzy. But before I do that, I'm going to check the phone and see if there's anything I'm missing that's important. Let's see. There's probably a lot of conversations. Yeah, I'm not going to be keeping up with all of that. But I'm glad you guys are. I'm having fun. I hope you guys are having fun. It's a lot better than sitting here just editing videos all day. Okay, but fuzzy friend. Un momento, por favor. Now, this fuzzy friend. Yeah, I'm waiting to see when my sign falls down. It's apparently not easy to take the wall. Anywho, this fuzzy friend has 8 legs and is not a fuzzy octopus. So, this lovely lady here is called a rose hair tarantula from Chile. And called so because, well, rosy pink on the top with her hairs. Now, while she looks like she's fuzzy and fun to pet like a kitty cat or bunny rabbit, she is not. All those hairs on her body there, they're actually prickly and pokey. They're barbed on the end, called ursicating hairs. And one of her little tricks is she actually throws them at us. Now, you can tell she's calm. She's friendly. I can even pet her, which I don't usually recommend people do because those ursicating hairs. Don't touch my face now. Anyway, she doesn't wake up in the morning saying, hey, let's go bite people all day. Woo, take me to birthday parties. No, she just wants to enjoy her day, eat some bugs, play with her friends, get a suntan. And we're the ones that often come along. We're like, scary spider. I'm going to punch it, kick it, step on it, squish it. And she doesn't want to get squished. I don't think any of you guys want to get squished. So she's going to defend herself. And she's nice enough not to just run up and bite you and run away, which she could totally do. Instead, they give us a warning. First thing they'll do, come here, baby. They lift up their arms and their legs to make themselves look as big as possible. And they take those fangs and they flex and they say, look what I got, buddy. They're pointy, sharp, and full of venom. If you don't leave me alone, I'm going to bite you with them. So I've now had two chances just to walk away, leave her alone. If I don't and I'm being silly, 3 strikes, Steve's out, she'll bite me. Now, lucky for me, her bite's not that bad. It's about the bee sting, between bee sting and mosquito bite. As long as you're not allergic, shouldn't hurt too much, shouldn't cry, need to a doctor, anything like that. And I think I missed the first step, which was her throwing her hairs, which is why we don't typically pet them. But anyway, so she is actually pretty much harmless. Now, there are some tarantulas that are pretty nasty, but If I remember correctly, there are none that are deadly again unless you're allergic. It's just not going to be a fun time, obviously. Now, being an arachnid, she has her 8 legs, 2 arms in the front, 8 eyeballs, 2 fangs, and then 2 spinnerets. Now, they're not like Spider-Man shooting their finger webs out, flying around the city. They use those little spinnerets at the back to lay down on the jungle floor to make a sticky web to catch their food. Now, the other cool thing is if she catches her food, and let's say it's a pretty big cricket or locust or mouse, she doesn't have teeth to chew her food, right? So when she bites them, her venom actually turns the inside, all the muscles, the bones, the organs, into a goo, so she can suck it out like a mouse Slurpee. Just spits the body like a juice bag container, spits it out. It's pretty awesome. Now, I do have to be careful. I often have people, often little guys, that want to be brave and try holding my little friend here, but we got to be careful because she does not have bones inside her body. She's got an exoskeleton, right? It's actually a shell that holds her body together, but that shell keeps her restricted to the size that she's at. So if she wants to get bigger and grow up and get larger, she actually has to jump out of her shell. She has to shed her skin and get bigger. So she'll actually flip upside down, push her skin off, puff up to get larger, and then a new skin hardens for her. The first time it happened to one of my tarantulas, I thought it died. I came over and I found one of my spiders upside down with its legs all kind of curled, and I was sad, and I thought it was gone. And I had to go to a birthday party, so I figured I'd come clean it up when I got back from the party. And when I got back, all of a sudden, there was 2 spiders in the cage. And I was like, why is there 2 spiders? That doesn't make sense. So Google, and Steve apparently had not done enough research before getting his spider, because that's what they'll do. So because of that protective shell, if someone thinks they're being brave and they can hold the tarantula, but then they're not and they drop her, dropping her is like dropping a chicken egg because she's got that shell. She'd actually crack and her guts can fall out. And their blood in their system isn't like ours, just through veins where if you get a cut, it just bleeds a little and then like gets a scab and you're fine. With these guys, their heart pumps blood through their whole entire insides. So if they get a crack, it just keeps pumping and pushing out and it doesn't heal. The only way you can really save them is if you take a little bit of like super glue and glue it. It'll actually, if it like holds it good, they can be fine. And when they shed their skin again, it'll actually be healed. They can heal it up. If one of their arms gets ripped off, they can actually grow a whole arm back as they molt. It's pretty neat. But yeah, we got to be very careful with them. These guys, as girls, can live 18 to 20 years, but the boys sadly only get to live about 10 to 12. Not nearly as long. But how about this? Let's do... my little buddy Jerry. Come here, Jerry. Ooh, jumping, Jerry. Jump. Fly. No, don't flop. Jump. Show him how you jump. That was a flop. Boo, Jerry, boo. All right. So my friend Jerry here is called an Australian green tree frog. But does he look very green? No. This is green. That's brown. That's because this dude can actually change color to camouflage. So, because this guy's nocturnal, he likes to sleep during the day, and he's up all at night. I heard him croaking last night, making noise looking for the lady frogs. When they're sleeping during the day, I want to make sure no one's going to eat them, right? Like my birdie friends from Australia, or anything else that's going to be ripping around there. So they turn green like the leaves. They turn brown like the bark. They pull their little legs in. They close their eyes. They'll legitimately look like a little lump on a log, lump on a leaf, until the nighttime comes. They wake up, they stretch out, and that's when you can see, another flop around. Hey, come here. You can see those legs. Look at those long legs, and they can hang just by a toe. Spider frog, does whatever a spider frog can. Now, can he fall? Yes, he can. I'm not being mean, but he's a frog. Being a tree frog, especially in Australia, he's not just hanging around like the first foot of the bushes. Like he's legitimately climbing up into the trees, 15, 20 feet in some cases, maybe higher. And when he jumps, sometimes he doesn't already jump and land where he wants to, and crash and burn. Now, lucky for him, his bones actually have hinges in them. So a hinge is what makes the door open and close, allows it to move, right? And his hinges allow his bones inside his body to get squishy. So instead of breaking his bones like we do when we fall out of a tree at even like 5 to 10 feet, his bones don't break and he can just flop around. He's got those sticky toes that when clean, he can actually climb right up on the glass. All right. I believe these guys are living usually 12 to 15 years. They do need some UV light, a little bit of a heat. Mist them once or twice a day to keep up the humidity, and they'll eat bugs probably every other day or so. They start off really cute and small, and they get, actually, some of them get pretty fat and big compared to this guy. Okay. That's enough jumping around and making me dirty. No. Bad frog, in your cage. Watch your toes. Good job, buddy. Look at that. All right. You go there. Ooh, I know what I'm going to do. Well, my hand's going to get dirty, so 1 second. Let me check this message in case there's... Like I said, we're going to do the question period at the end, so I can actually focus and answer your questions. All right, yeah, because you guys are just chatting. Have fun. Hope you guys are. All right, let me see. Oh, you stink. Oh, you stink. This is my buddy Orville. And you know how with the first turtle we talked about aquatic turtles? This is an aquatic turtle. This is a snapping turtle, a common snapping turtle found here in Manitoba and pretty much most of North America. We know a difference as soon as we look at it compared to the little tortoise is that not a high dome shell. It's very flat. It's got the cute little ridges along the side. And big webbed feet. Sharp claws for climbing and digging. Because, well, right about now, with the lake starting and the river starting to thaw, our friend Orville here would be starting to come out and looking for food, fishes that are starting to swim, geese feet that are swimming on top, kids' toes that are dipping in the water, right? But one of the cool things is, where do you think a common snapping turtle here like Orville would be staying all winter when we're frozen with our rivers and everything covered for 7 months, 6 months? Well, the common snapping turtle and even our painted turtle, along with many other turtles, do this really cool thing where they breathe through their butts. Yep. It's called an anal respiratory system. Oh, you got sharp claws. Yeah. So anal respiratory system. So what that means is they've got a gland in their butt. No! Fat Orville. Why do you always have to be the worst? Again, I'm not a big fan of turtles. Bad turtle. Okay, sit here nicely. So that's the other thing. I got to be careful and hold my hands back here. Ow! Sharp claws. Sharp claws. Because if I get too close to the front, that neck, while it looks short and stubby right now, can come out quite far, lean back, and take off fingers. And if you look at the snout, that's a nice big snout that's nice and sharp. I'm sure you might have seen videos on Facebook and YouTube of people trying to kiss them and having noses or lips ripped off. I'm not that dumb. I won't be doing that. But anyway, back to the anal respiratory system. Yeah, they sit in the water, and scientists at first thought maybe they were just farting because they saw air bubbles coming out. But when they noticed air bubbles going in, they figured out that they're actually breathing through their butts. So these guys in the winter dig down as deep as they can into the mud, breathe through their butts, and ride out the winter till they come up and go around and have some fun. Now, technically in Manitoba, you cannot have these guys as pets. Being a local species, you're not supposed to have wildlife as pets. So if you go outside and see one of these, or a painted turtle, or a garter snake now in spring with the Narcissus snake dens opening up, you are not technically supposed to have those as pets. Now, is conservation going to knock on your door if you have one turtle or a little snake? Likely not. Can they? Yes. Their main purpose, though, is they don't want someone making profit of them, going out and grabbing snakes from the dens or the turtles from the ponds and then selling them on Kijiji to make a profit from them. Clearly, that's wrong. And we don't encourage it either. This was someone's pet that was a rescue that came surrendered. Can't really release it out into the wild. We have had some situations where there's been turtles that were just kept shortly as pets. They'd found at the lake or along the river or whatnot that given their situation, we were able to release them into the proper habitat. But with Orville here, I think he's been a pet since he was young. So I don't know that he would survive well in the wild. And we also don't want to risk anything possibly getting from captive care into our native environment. So we do not encourage any animals being left outside. There's rescues if you're not in Manitoba to see us for any rescue help. There are rescues pretty much in every province. Feel free to contact us. We'll help you. Whether it's a native species, wildlife outside, or even an exotic pet, if you're not sure where it needs to go, how to take care of it, anything like that, feel free to message us. And if we can't help you, we can definitely connect you with people that can. So, because some of these pets are awesome pets, some of them not so much. And Orville, not so much a great pet because he needs a big pond. Like we're talking 500 gallons plus, which is not cheap. I mean, we use a big horse water trough for him, a decent filter. But even with a good filter, with how much he eats, how messy he is, how much he poops, his water has to be changed at least every 2 to 3 weeks. And again, going back to that turtle poop soup, no matter how careful you are, you're going to get some splash in your face. So it's not fun. And this guy can live quite some time. Again, being an aquatic turtle sitting at the bottom of his pond, you're not really playing with him. So you're now spending hundreds of dollars taking care of an animal that makes a lot of mess that you can't really play with. So not the bestest pet. But let me put Orville back over here. And let's see who else we got. Let's do this one. Again, for anyone concerned, these are not the enclosures they live in. These are just temporary transport enclosures like what we use for taking them to birthday parties like we're kind of doing right now for Brennon's party. With our new property, we got 80 acres. We got the house I currently live in, and I actually have a secondary house that was supposed to be torn down, but with a little bit of work is actually perfect for all my animals. So, oh, bless you. So the animals are in the other house. They've got their enclosures all set up. Eventually, I'll do a tour and show you guys around there, but I figured because my desktop with proper internet, everything connected was in my room, this was likely the best place to do this so that we didn't have to deal with buffering and bull stuff issues. Speaking of bullfrog. Ugh. I hope that's water. Ugh. So, this is Prince Charming. And Prince Charming is an African bullfrog or a pixie frog. And they'll actually do the same thing too. He's got a bit of skin here, a little dry. If they aren't moist for a while, their skin will harden up. But these guys are all over the place in Africa. Like we've got our leopard frogs and boreal chorus frogs and all the guys, the spring peepers or pippers we have. These guys are all over. They lay hundreds, if not thousands, of tadpoles. We all know what tadpoles are, little jelly bean guys that breathe underwater. They've got a long tail, no arms and legs. But then all of a sudden, as they start to grow and get bigger, eating algae and other bugs and stuff, all of a sudden they grow front arms. And then they grow with these little big back legs. They actually suck their tail in. They don't like have it fall off. They actually absorb it. And then they jump into the water. Now, these guys are probably a little bit larger when they come out of the water, but I've actually bred Amazon milk frogs from tadpole to frog. And those guys, they're about the size of the white tree frog, Jerry, that I showed you. When they come out of their water, they're about the size of a pinky nail. They can sit on the pinky nail. We have to feed them baby fruit flies that we culture and grow for them. And once they're big enough, then they move to crickets and keep going. This dude, though, he's eating like a jumbo mouse or a bowl of worms or a small rat or a chick, egg, pretty much anything. He's kind of a dumpster. Oh, there you go. Just don't pee. When they pee, they'll shoot it out like a super soaker. Don't do it. Chubby monkey. And as far as in taking care of them, this dude's enclosure, again, about the size of my mat here. You're not going to use sand or anything dry. Wet. Cocoa fiber, dirt mixture with some moss. More of a wet side that you can bury into if he needs. A little of a dry side. He can come out if he wants to warm up. Again, doesn't need UV, but will probably benefit from it. Heat's usually good enough from a heat pad or a heat emitter. Again, being an amphibian, not one that you're going to be touching a whole heck of a lot, but a fun pet to have there if you're someone that likes just have to fish something to look at and take care of. These guys are not bad. Where are you going? No, we're gonna go back in here. Back in here. Nope, back in there. All right. Thank you. We're down to the last couple. I think I got 3 more. How are we doing for time? Holy cow, I wasn't sure if we'd even get 20 or 30 minutes, but apparently I could ramble on for quite some time. All right. I need to make sure I do the right order because one of these could eat the other ones. Houdini. Hi, sweetheart. How are you? So Houdini is a female Argentine black and white Tegu. Tegu is kind of like a monitor lizard, like a smaller Komodo dragon, essentially. Hi. And in all honesty, while you might get the odd feisty one, depending on their life situation and upbringing, like many people, most of them are like puppy dogs. Now, do not take that as thinking that you should have one. They're easy and they're super great for everyone. That is not the case. They're like dogs in that they're pretty easygoing. And once you have the proper enclosure set up and their feeding schedule and things sorted out, they're a pretty good pet for someone that's got a little bit of an experience with them. Now, someone about this size, and the boys will often get a little bit bigger, they've got the big jowls there, will need about a 4 by 8 foot enclosure, roughly 2.5, 3 feet tall. Really high basking spot at like 130, 140 degree temperature. The rest of the enclosure warmed up on one side, probably around the mid to high 80s, sorry. And they're an omnivore. But like most monitors, they're also an opportunistic feeder. And what that means is they eat when there's an opportunity presented to them. And they'll gorge themselves. They'll eat as much as they possibly can at that time because they don't know when they're going to get food again. So the problem with that is in captivity, if you feed them, like with us, if we see our dog and the dog is begging at the dish, some people just keep feeding until it's done begging and it's no longer hungry. This thing will continue to beg for food till the food is legitimately falling out of its mouth. So the problem with that is in captivity, that'll lead to obesity if you're not on it, if you're feeding the wrong types of food, high fatty foods. And just too often, and also not giving them the interaction and exercise they need to burn off. In the wild, they're chasing their food, they're hunting, they're active, but at home they become lethargic, like some ones we've seen on YouTube, like MacGyver, that big red Tegu being fed cheeseburgers, which we do not suggest. Even with a very popular one is Savannah monitors because they stay about this size as well, but people feed them a lot of rodents and then they get fat and obese and lethargic, whereas in the wild they're typically eating worms and crickets and locusts and small things where they have to be active, running after small pieces of high protein, low fat food. So again, also high UV lights for the you'll notice too, my friend Houdini, settle down, we'll show your tail. Starting right about here, you'll notice it gets a little more narrow. This is ribbed. It doesn't have as much white. And then here, it's really abrasive. And that's because Houdini here has a regrown tail. I'm not sure how she lost it or why. But at some point, whether it was whipping someone or something really hard and it breaking and then falling off, or predator biting you or sibling or kid or who knows, but they can grow it back. I've even seen with some tegus as well as some other geckos and lizards where if they get just a break, it'll start to grow out even while the other one heals, and they'll end up with a split tail. In some cases, even multiple splits down that tail. It's pretty cool. These guys also have beaded scales, which are kind of neat. When they shed, they don't typically shed all at once. Let go of my microphone. They typically will shed piece by piece. Let's show them your beautiful face. You don't want to show them your face. There's a big long tongue, like a snake. Uses that for smelling. Okay, let's put you back over here. I got 2 more. And the last one is pretty cool. Actually, they're both pretty cool. You stay in there. My next friend is my buddy Dennis. And Dennis actually comes from a rescue out in BC. I've had him now for 5-ish years, I think. And he is He was 22 when I got him. So I think he's around, I don't know, 27, 28. Actually, so he came from my friend Mike Hopcraft, the reptile guy at Wild Education. Was in Mission, BC, now I think Abbotsford. Anyway, I got this guy from him when we took a bunch of animals in. And that fall at the WCRE in Red Deer, actually, I had the pleasure of meeting the owner. Had Dennis here since he was just a young guy. Now, Dennis is a Dumeril boa from Madagascar. And while most of the boas that most people typically see are the common red-tailed boas from South America, those guys are arboreal. So they've got a longer tail for wrapping around the trees, helps them look for monkeys and birds and things like that they're wanting to eat. But Dennis here being a ground boa, he stays on the ground. While his pattern is quite beautiful, especially here on my table, you can see him standing out in the dead leaf litter of Madagascar where he lives. He'd blend in and hide really well, camouflage, and he'd be sitting there. And while he doesn't have the heat pits like Kalua does the python, he does have his tongue to smell. And we all know they smell with their tongue, but what they're actually technically doing is they take that tongue, they wiggle it in the air, they collect all the scent particles, smells of everything in that room, and they rub it between their eyes and nose with a Jacobson's organ. It's like a little computer. Pardon me. And it looks at all the little smells that they collected. It tells one of those smells is something they could eat like a mouse or a rat. And the coolest part is because that tongue is forked, kind of like a Y, it's not round and boring like mine. He can actually smell left and smell right, kind of how we hear left and hear right. So he knows which way to find his food. So if we've got Chloe smelling more birdie over here, it's going to smell stronger like food. He's going to want to go this way to find his food. Kind of like if we're like, where's the kitchen? Until you find some snacks or head out the window of the car. McDonald's, cheeseburgers over there. Be a great way to find food. Again, like I said, being a ground boa, he does have a short tail. His tail is just about that part. Now, one of the other questions we often get is, first, is it poisonous? Or once we correct them on that, is it venomous? And for the world's population of snakes, only 22% of the world's population of snakes are venomous, which means 78%, which is a lot more, almost 80%, are constrictors. Those are squeezers. They're the ones that give you a kiss, hug, squeeze, and eat you whole. Now, the difference between venom and poison is that it's the delivery system, essentially. With poison, it's something like poisoned food, like if you get bad Chinese food, gives you food poisoning, or you get poison ivy, makes you itchy. It's something that's absorbed into your skin, or it's ingested through your mouth. That's what poisonous is. If it's venomous, it's something that's actually being injected through the fangs of a cobra, a rattlesnake, a tarantula, a stinger of a scorpion, or a bee even. So to keep it simple and dumb it down, if it bites you, it's venomous, and if it bites or you bite it, it's poisonous. But there is always one exception to that rule, and there is a family of snakes in South America, the keelbacks, and they're actually both poisonous and venomous. The reason being is if they bite something, they've got venom glands, and they'll kill whatever they're trying to eat. But they've learned how to eat toxic frogs, similar to like a poison dart frog, and it builds a toxin up in their skin, so any animal tries to eat them, will spit them out because they've actually become poisonous now, to the point that when they have birth, they have their babies, they actually pass those toxins onto their offspring. So their offspring are technically poisonous and venomous without even having to eat the toads. So that's quite fantastic. A snake like my friend Dennis here, he's in about I think it's a 2 foot by 6 foot by 2 foot enclosure. Heat pad on one side. He doesn't have any lights, big water dish to go in and soak. And being an older, larger snake in fairly good condition here, he eats every 3 to 4 months, but I'm feeding him usually 4 or 5 pound rabbit every 3 or 4 months. So that's only every 3 to 4 times in a year. And that rabbit costs me usually 5 pounds, $2 a pound, $10. So $10 3 or 4 times a year. It's not too bad. Now, this is one that typically we would not be able to take into Winnipeg. In Winnipeg, there are bylaws, restrictions on what you can have as pets. No boas or pythons over 2 meters, so roughly 6 feet. All their snakes, 3 meters, roughly 9 feet. Lizards are restricted to 2 meters unless they're a veranid, which is a monitor species. Those are restricted to 1 meter or 3 feet. No venomous, no primates. For tarantulas, we're allowed to have the rose hair, the red knee, and the pink toe family. No scorpions. So it's one thing, you have to know where you live, what the bylaws are. Luckily in Manitoba, we have no restrictions in Manitoba. each province is different. Here in Manitoba, though, it's up to the RM or the rural municipality or the city town. And again, Winnipeg has their own based off of Ottawa. But where I live currently in Taché, just outside Winnipeg, we have no restrictions yet. Right next door in Broken Head, even I think St. Anne, you can't have any constricting snakes and no venomous snakes. So that's essentially no snakes. So it's always good to know what you're allowed to have when you're either looking at moving or purchasing a new snake even. So let's put Dennis back in his box. And I got one last final friend for you if this tortoise doesn't escape again. Let me see. 1 second, Dennis, come here. And Dennis the Menace is the girlfriend to Phoebe. And we were hoping Phoebe, who we have a permit for to be in this city, since we had her before the bylaws changed in 2014, and we were able to grandfather her in. Since Dumeril's boas aren't often produced, they're not very common. That's what I was kind of hoping I would like to possibly have babies from. Nice thing too is being that it's a boa, they're live birth, so there are no eggs to worry about incubating. You just all of a sudden get babies. On that note, we don't typically breed. Being that we're a rescue and taking in people's unwanted pets, I feel it's wrong. Doesn't seem right to take in unwanted pets in the back door and then produce animals I can sell you at the front door, which eventually just come in the back door. It just seems not right. So that's why our focus is more education like this, teaching people about animals, which ones are good to have as pets, which ones aren't, which ones are more work, and help hopefully alleviate and stop some of the problem before those animals need to be rescued, because I'd rather help stop the problem than add to the problem. There's a lot of people that call themselves rescues, but they're pumping out common pets that you find on Kijiji all the time. That just doesn't seem right. If I'm breeding something, it's something that I consider hobby or zoo level. It's something that you're not going to find in a store. Someone from across Canada or the US or the UK is going to want and pay for shipping and have a good home and keep it for their life. They're not going to be, I got a new gecko, 6 months later, I'm done, give it to my friend. No. All right, so back to the fun. Look at this cutie. And I'll admit this is one that I breed because these are one of my favorites and they're awesome pets. And here in Manitoba, we don't have anyone really properly breeding these guys. Most people breeding them are obviously facilities or big breeders for stores and stuff like that. And they're not playing with them. They're just producing them. And with mine, when we have produced them, we haven't produced them in. How old are you? You're over 2 years old. She was the last. Thanks for that. She was the last litter that we produced. Her grandpa was actually one of my first hedgehogs. I get him with his, well, it wasn't her grandma, but anyway, another female. And he was so big and heavy that when you held him, you get pinpricks of little blood on your hand just from his weight because he was just so heavy and sharp. Because that's their defense, right, is to roll up into a ball. But the problem you can see with mine is, like I said, I socialize them too much. Once they're 6 weeks and they're not nursing and drinking with mom anymore, I start to play with them every day. Take them out, play with them. So they don't think they're scared. They don't need to roll up, and they don't go into a ball. Most of the ones at the pet stores won't come out of a ball. And if you get them out of a ball, they'll hiss and try and bite you. But my guys are super friendly. So hedgehogs are actually found everywhere in the world except for here where we live in North America and Antarctica, because obviously it's too cold. But in some places like the United Kingdom, their hedgehogs get so big, they're almost like our porcupines. If you hit them with a car, they'll blow out your tire. But this one is an African pygmy hedgehog, so from Africa, small, like a dwarf little version. So like I said, her grandpa's pretty big. She's about average, give or take. Now, people sometimes think they're not going to be such a great pet because they're nocturnal. They're going to be in a wheel all night. But these guys are actually pretty good because in the wild, they'll live 2 to 3 years. If you take good care of them, they can live 7 to 8 years, actually, which is pretty good. Their enclosure is not much bigger than, again, my little mat here. They're going to have the typical wood shavings in there, a little bowl of food, water bottle, little house for them, and a wheel. But I got to warn you, with their wheel, they don't stop running, and they get excited. And they don't stop going to the bathroom, and it just becomes a poop storm of poop flying in their wheel. So you do often have to give them their bath and clean their wheel. But other than that, they're pretty easy. For a diet, though, they're not just eating fruits and veggies. These guys will eat anything they can take over as far as meat. They're hardcore carnivores. In the wild, bugs, crickets, cockroaches, worms. But they can also eat venomous tarantulas, scorpions, lizards, snakes. Luckily, we just feed them a high-protein cat food. Little kibble, nice and easy. So that was the last friend. Let me see. Holy cow, I talked for like an hour. I hope you guys enjoy that. I'm going to keep an eye on her and hope she does. No, I'm not going to do that because she will fall. So hedgehogs also don't have good depth perception. So they will walk to the edge and just jump right off. I had one that I was trying to determine if it was a boy or a girl. And I put it on a glass table because I couldn't tell. And it legit walked off and spiked me in the face. So that was fun. Okay. So I hope you guys enjoyed meeting all my animals. Do you have any questions that I can answer? I'll give you 5-10 minutes and I'll keep an eye on here and see if I can answer any questions. You are very welcome, Brennon. I'm sorry I couldn't do it in person. One of the best things is obviously being able to touch the animals, hold them, put the snake around your neck. But during this unfortunate time, we got to make the most. So I'm glad we could at least share this time together and we could learn a little bit of our animals. And I'll have to come visit you guys soon. Maybe I'll bring something along. Well, come on now, phone. I am definitely going to have to wash my hands after this, though. Oh, yeah, totally got spiked. And I'm pretty sure there's poo or dirt on my hands. Wait, let's test it. Poo, but what kind of poo? Has a hint of bug. Not much green. No, I kid. That's a good way to get coronavirus. Actually, I don't know. I don't think it comes from animals. There's no... Well, okay, wait. We're not getting into that. The big snake, there, Dennis, he gets a big rabbit, about 4 or 5 pound rabbit every 3 or 4 months. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. Brennan, happy birthday. I hope you have a good one. Stay out of trouble. Get some sleep. Eat your veggies. Wash your hands. Don't cough on anyone. And the rest of you, everyone stay safe. Stay home with your family. Wash your hands. Have fun as much as you can. If you're not an adult, get your mom or dad to check our Facebook or YouTube because I'm going to try and do some more of these videos. Hopefully one on Saturday. Won't be as long. We'll just try and do 15, 20-minute clips, introduce you to 2 or 3. I had no idea how long this was going to go, but I had fun. I hope you guys all did too. Learned a little bit about some of my little friends here. Stay safe, and we will all chat again soon. Thanks, guys. Happy birthday, Brennan.